We'll go hands up. Well, your sister's gonna come and then.
Alright, today we are going to take a look at combining everything that we've talked about with limits so far, okay, into a sketching activity. Right? So we're going to be given some information about our function, about a certain function, and we have to sketch something that satisfies all of these conditions. Right? So, first we need to just be able to read and understand what each of these things are saying. Right? So this first statement here, the limit as x approaches infinity of our function equals 2, what does that mean? So, if we're saying as x approaches infinity, that means that we're going to be going forever this way, and our y value is going to be approaching 2. So that means we're going to have a horizontal asymptote at 2. Right? Now, I don't know exactly where that's going to be coming from. Right? I don't know yet if that's going to be coming from above or below, but I do know that this tells me I'm going to have an asymptote, a horizontal asymptote at 2. Right? Now, the second one, it says as x approaches negative infinity, we're approaching a different y value. So as we go to negative infinity, what does this one say? Right. So it's going to get closer and closer to negative 1. So over here, we'll have a horizontal asymptote at negative 1. Now, here, okay, these two both say as we're approaching 3, right? This one from the left and this one from the right. Right? And it says that both of them, from the left and from the right, equal positive infinity. Okay? So what does that mean? That one's going to be a vertical asymptote. Right? So that's going to be a vertical asymptote over here at 3. Right? So I know that as I go further and further to the left, I'm going to be approaching a y value of negative 1. As I go further and further to the right, I'm going to be approaching a y value of 2. And then as I approach 3 from the left and from the right, I'm going to be going to positive infinity. So what is this function going to look like? How can I sketch something that satisfies all 4 of these conditions? It'll be a couple of different pieces. Yeah. So if we're thinking about, well, I know that as we get closer and closer to 3 from both directions, right, I'm approaching positive infinity. So I could go ahead and sketch that part in. And I know that it's going to be going up in both of those. But then as I go to the right, as I go to positive infinity, I'm going to be approaching this asymptote of 2. And then as I go to the left, I'm going to be approaching this asymptote of negative 1. So my function that satisfies all 4 of these conditions would just look something like this. Right? Now, we don't have any idea based on this information how steep or shallow we should make this curve. Right? So there are some variations that you could have, okay? But this satisfies all 4 of those conditions. We okay with something like that? All right. So then, let's take a look down at number 2 here. Okay. Let's take a couple of minutes and see if you guys can sketch something out here that satisfies all 5 of these conditions. Right? I mean, you can work together, bounce ideas off of each other. Let's see if you can sketch this function.
Get the training.
So
I think it's such bright sunshine outside.
I don't know if that's
How do you get that?
There's nicer weather somewhere that I'm trying to get.
Oh, I don't know if it is.
that's not what it's 5 o'clock
It doesn't
somewhere.
I know, definitely not. I know, but
I don't know if it goes to where it goes to infinity.
It
Of going up.
I need to go.
No, I don't know where it goes up.
Honestly.
You'll figure this out.
Okay, Mr. So how would I do? So like that's with X, F2.
And then I know F2 equals 0.
So like that just means that there's nothing. There'd be nothing on 2. Like
So there shouldn't be an X.
that means the line is.
There has to
the
be an
line goes right here.
Well, that piece of information, all that tells you is that add 2
But then neither of those would have
right?
So you just
Yeah, but you still have
That's all that piece of information tells you.
Okay, let's ask.
No.
Let's ask. No,
So
no.
we gotta go through that.
Yeah, so we know, I mean,
It's better to ask.
it might go through that or it might not, right? There are some functions where there's just a random point defined somewhere else, right? The function could be up here with a hole and it's defined down there.
Okay. Because then it counts.
Those.
It's just going
You don't have to do that.
No, probably last year.
At 3.
It has to.
Hey, Mia, what did you use? Yeah. What? What did you use in chemistry? We started this project. And yeah, we use magic.
I'm just.
And
I don't know.
did
I'm
you take
really
it for the
confused.
test? Yeah. We had to do it
And
already.
I feel so
It takes
stupid
5
just
minutes
looking at
to do
this.
it, or like at the end of the beginning of class. Oh, do your chemistry, do your test.
Can you explain to me yours?
It's going to. Wait, I can grab
I did 20 and then I missed one. And I think one of them was yes.
Yeah.
Like that?
All right, are we ready to?
No.
Not yet.
No.
All right.
You can ask for
Yeah, can we just do a multiple choice or we have to do it? I did all multiple choice. You suggest.
I don't know what's right. It's a little bit of nonsense. Okay. See for
All right, ready? All right, I'm actually going to go backwards on this one. I'm going to start with the last piece of information and work my way up. So this last piece, f of 2 equals 0, just tells me that the point 2, 0 is part of the graph. Right? So I can go ahead and sketch in a dot at 2, 0. This piece then, limit as x approaches 2 from the right is equal to -1. Right? That tells me that I'm coming from the right, and as I approach my x value of 2, I'm going to be going towards a y value of -1. Okay? Well, I already know that this point is part of the graph, so that tells me that this point is going to have to be an open dot. Right? So I'm coming from this direction, I'm approaching a y value of -1. Right? I don't know what else the function is going to do over here yet, so I'm just going to kind of sketch in a little line there saying, well, I know I'm going to -1 from this direction. This piece, as x approaches 2 from the left, says I'm going to a y value of +1. Right? So here, I know I'm coming from the left, going up here. Again, I don't know what's going to happen over here yet, so I'm just going to sketch in a tiny little piece going to 2 from that direction. Well, then this piece says, as I go forever to the left, I'm approaching a y value of 3. So that tells me there's going to be an asymptote at 3. Right? Well, I already know this piece is here. Right? I'm going to a value of 1 from the left. So I can kind of connect those pieces here and say, well, my function's probably going to do something like that over here. Then the last piece tells me, as we approach an x value, or as x approaches infinity, the function also goes to infinity. That means it's just going to keep going up forever. Right? So, I mean, you could express that in a lot of different ways. Right? I mean, you could just have a line going up. You could have some function growing like that. Right? So there's different ways to express that over here, just as long as you show that it's not bounded. Right? It's not approaching some asymptote. So this would be an example of a function that satisfies all 5 of these conditions. Feel okay with something like that? What's not okay? What doesn't make sense? If you have questions, now's the time to ask.
I just need to do things.
Just being annoying.
She doesn't want to ask. I think she needs to know what she wants to ask.
All right. Then on the back,
Why is she going to say
Okay, no, Nicole didn't type.
Why I
That menu.
on the back, we want to sketch out a function that satisfies these 9 pieces of information. Okay? This is going to take a little bit more time. Okay? This one is a little bit trickier, okay, than the ones on the front. Okay?
Are we doing it on this paper?
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we're going to take a little bit of time here, right, to try to sketch out a function that satisfies all 9 of these. So a good first step might be to look at these and figure out where the asymptotes are going to be. Right? Figure out where vertical or horizontal asymptotes are going to be. So, I'm just going to go in order down the list here. So the first piece of information says the limit as t approaches infinity is equal to 2. Bless you. So that tells me as I go further and further to the right, I'm going to be approaching a y value of 2. So that tells me I'm going to have an asymptote at 2. I don't know if I'm going to be above or below it yet, so I'm just going to sketch in that asymptote. Second piece tells me g of 0 equals 8. So that tells me I'm going to have a solid dot at the point 0, 8. The next piece says the limit as t approaches 0 is equal to 5. Well, and that's a two-sided limit, right? There's no plus or minus there. So that tells me from both directions as I approach 0, I'm going to be approaching a y value of 5. And again, I don't know what's going on past that yet, but I know that from both sides, I'm going to be approaching a y value of 5. So I'll just kind of sketch in a couple of little lines there. The next piece says g of negative 6 equals 10. So again, that tells me that I'm going to have a point here at negative 6, 10. Then the limit as t approaches negative 6 from the right is equal to 10. Well, that tells me as I'm coming from this direction, I'm going to be approaching that point that we just put in there. And as we approach negative 6 from the right, we're equal to 10. The next piece says the limit as t approaches negative 6 from the left is equal to 14. So as I'm coming from this direction, I'm going to be approaching a value of 14. Right? So again, I don't know what's going on over here, but I know I'm coming to a y value of 14. Then it says limit as t approaches negative 10 from the right is positive infinity. So that tells me I'm going to have an asymptote through negative 10. Right? As I come from the right, I'm going to positive infinity. Right? So I'll just kind of sketch that in for now. Then as I'm coming from the left, I'm going to negative infinity. And the last piece is as t approaches negative infinity, I'm going to positive infinity. So as I go further and further this way, my function is just going up forever. Right? Well, now I can just kind of connect all of these pieces. Right? So we know that as we go forever to the right, I'm approaching this asymptote. Looks like I can kind of connect these pieces here. Probably connect to right there, here, and then connect those. Right? So our function should look something like this, okay, to satisfy all 9 of those pieces of information. Okay. Questions? You feel all right with something like this? I mean, this was hard. Right? This was definitely a challenging problem. And this took everything that we've talked about with limits so far and crammed it all into one problem. Right? So no questions?